Hey, what's going on, guys? Griffin here. I am absolutely stoked to bring you this conversation with one of the OGs in the film review space, in the film YouTube space, an inspiration really to anyone who has ever started a film review channel, myself included. That is Mr. Chris Stuckmann. He's got a new movie coming out. It's Shelby Oaks. It comes out in theaters this Friday, October 24th, and it is kind of a surreal thing. Now, just full disclaimer, I'm not a backer on the project, but I have been following it very closely for a long time, and I'm a big fan of Chris and everything he's done. And making the leap from YouTuber to filmmaker, actually not even YouTuber, film critic to filmmaker, he joins a very select group of people, and the fact that he was able to do this and do it with as much passion and love for the craft as he did is kind of astonishing. And being able to talk with him about the film was just kind of an incredible experience. I mean, this is a guy who opened the doors for a lot of us. He was able to make film criticism in a video format like this on YouTube into a legitimate platform, right? Like he was able to open, doors for Rotten Tomatoes, for getting on press lists. If it wasn't for him, I mean, so many of us wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. And we talk about that. We talk about the state of film criticism, him kind of reflecting on it now being, on the other side of this dichotomy, if you will. And during an era where it seems like film criticism and film journalism is being devalued, how will it endure this tumultuous period? We also get into talking about how personal the project was for him and some of the elements of his past that found their way into this story. If you're familiar with Chris's story, you're going to be moved by how personal it is. You're going to be able to see a lot of him in there. And I think for a first-time director, I mean, that's all you could ever really hope for, right? Is for them to tell their truth, for them to infuse aspects of themselves, their personality, whether it's like his analytical eye for film criticism, whether it's, the trauma he endured growing up as a Jehovah's Witness and how he was able to break away from that and uncovering truth. We get into a whole bunch of that over the course of this conversation. But more importantly, I think it was just really special to talk with one of our own, about just this big moment, this milestone in his career and for the platform as a whole. Because while there have been other YouTubers who have made this jump, and we do talk about that during the course of this conversation, Chris is really the first film critic YouTuber to make this transition and make it as prominently as he did. He's not only like opening up the doors for, YouTubers and film critics to become filmmakers, but I think he's going to be exposing a lot of people to the beauty of indie cinema. And I think more than anything, that is what's so special about this project and about his investment and passion. Everyone who backed the project believed in him, believed in his dedication to doing this right, to making the best movie he possibly could at this point in time. And I think as a first film, he did a really solid job. He shows so much promise as a filmmaker with Shelby Oaks. His influences, he wears on his sleeves, and I think that's part of what's endearing about it. And I know I've just said this a bunch of times, but I think it is so fucking cool that we are going to be seeing a movie by Chris Stuckmann in theaters basically worldwide at this point. Like that's crazy. It's so amazing to see this happen. I want to say thank you to Chris for his time and for his openness and generosity. He was very, very kind and thoughtful in his answers. I could have talked to him for another 30 minutes if I had the time. Could have talked about GoldenEye. We talked about GoldenEye for a second off camera before the whole thing started rolling, and that was really cool. Also, I'll be doing a video on Shelby Oaks, breaking it down in my typical, review video essay kind of format, so you can be on the lookout for that probably after release, once people have had a chance to see the film and I can talk about spoilers. And then also, make sure you stay tuned to the end because there's a special appearance by someone that you all may know. A very sweet moment. It was so cool, man. It was really cool. So just make sure you stick around for the end. It really just shows the impact that he's had. All right, enough from me. Let's get into this thing. Here's my conversation with Chris Stuckmann. I got the opportunity to chat with you a little bit before and congratulate you on the film. And I saw it again, and I want to congratulate you again on the film because I was able to take my girlfriend with me this time, and she loved it. And she's a massive found footage and, aughts horror fan. So it was like, boom, seal of approval there. So
Thank you, Griffin. And thank you to Griffin's girlfriend.
perfect. Thank you. So I guess the place I kind of want to start with this, and I know you've been getting a lot of questions about like critic, YouTuber, filmmaker, and that kind of, relationship with that. But just as like a creative, I'm kind of curious about what your perception was of being a director, and then when you went into actually direct and make the movie, like how it maybe differed from how you had envisioned it in your head. If there were parts of the process that you hadn't considered that really like stuck out to you that you wound up enjoying.
I think being on set when obviously, and we were all very tired, and I was away from my kids, I think for the first time ever, really at that point. And that was sad. But being there with all of these immensely supportive, creative people was such an incredible experience to just be around these folks who all loved movies to such an extent that they were like, no, we want to spend our lives making them.
Yeah.
And there's something so powerful about that for me. I think as far as real sort of tangible on-set things that I learned, number one, my respect level for practical effects has shot through the roof because of how much care goes into pulling off an in-camera practical effect, how long it takes to do one of those, the amount of cleanup that comes with it, but also really, if you have an amazing gaffer like we did Benny F, and a DP like we did Andrew Baird, how long it takes to light just a corner of a house and be like, this is the corner we're going to live in for the next few hours. And we really want to make sure this looks perfect. The hair light's perfect. Everything's perfect. And seeing that, start as you're looking at the monitor and it's almost black. And then you're seeing the lights turn on and you're seeing the scene get created and you're seeing the actors come in and you're watching how they are doing. That is such a level of artistry. It's like they're painting the picture and you told them what you wanted. You were very clear about your vision and now they're making it, they're building it right in front of you.
Yeah.
Getting to see that every single day was so inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, I have to imagine, because I think like, at least for like myself and like the times when I've dabbled in like short films and whatnot, it's like I have these like vague ideas of what you kind of want in your head. And sometimes it's maybe a little bit more specific in other areas. But when you really collaborate with an artist who has that like eye, who is able to like pull those elements out that maybe you're not even considering, that is able to paint, like you said, those images, it's shocking, like in a way where you're just like, oh, I guess that is kind of what I was thinking, and I didn't even realize it,
Yeah, and if you get the right collaborators, they're going to be able to really understand your FilmSpeak, whatever it is that you're trying to say. You're like, it looks like this, but kind of like this, and could you put her there? And and that we had such an incredible crew. I mean, everybody on our set was used to working on an indie film, but also some of them had worked on really big productions like Fear the Walking Dead. And so they're very, very accustomed to the grind of go, 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 go.
Yeah.
If you take a crew from television and put them on a film set, it's incredible because TV sets run very differently where, they do very minimal takes and the schedule is such a crush. It's such a grind that they're used to working so fast. And so it's brilliant to take a crew that has worked primarily on TV, bring them over to movies and be like, let's take a little more time, but still let's go really fast.
Yeah. Well, that just made me think of something I was really kind of fascinated by. Do you think that television artisans then are undervalued in what they can contribute to feature films?
100%. Absolutely. On TV, they always say the writers are king, the showrunners, are king, and the directors are lower on the totem pole. And in film, it feels like it's the opposite, where the director is the one who has the final say and the writers are not treated with enough respect. It's one of the reasons why so many television shows are so good, is because the writers are given that much room and that much, time and care.
Yeah.
Because it always starts there, with the writing and the script. And so I do think that, yes, more people who work in television should also work in film. But obviously, like crews, if you ask any crew member, they call everything a show. Most of the people on my crew would call this movie a show. They're like, oh, I'm on a show in Ohio right now. That's how they describe it.
Yeah.
Because they're used to the grind. They're, if you've seen like movies about like traveling circuses, where it's like there's a train of people who all work for a circus and they all feel like a family. A lot of crew who've been around the block know each other. They've all like, we had a lot of crew from Austin, Chicago, and some from Ohio. And there were a lot of people on set who had known each other for years just because they've been on different sets together.
Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. I love the, and that's one of the, I think we always hear people talk about it, but I guess like it is one of those things where it's like the community and the brotherhood within filmmaking, I think that's the thing. That's why people keep doing it. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit into talking about just like the YouTube aspect of it, because I think we've seen, well, I don't want to say it's like a new thing because it is something that has been present for a while, but like there's been a lot of prominent YouTubers lately, like the Philippa brothers, Bo Burnham, yourself, even like Koganada, right? Who's making like video essays back in the day, who have really taken the leap into feature filmmaking. And what I love about it is that they've met, like each of the filmmakers, yourself included, has managed to take the thing that you do really well on the platform and translate it into a feature film. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that, and like how, you know, you all managed to make that leap. And like I don't know, to me it's one of those things where it's like, oh, is something like what Bo Burnham did on like Vine right back in the day, or on YouTube, like would that translate to a feature film? And it did. And the same way with you as a film critic, I found your analytical eye translated really, really well, and your love of found footage translated really well to the story you wanted to tell.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I do think that it's twofold. I think that you can't help but be some aspect of yourself when you're creating something,
Right.
obviously. But I also think that there is a fear, I think, for first timers where it's like, well, there is a certain kind of expectation for me, so I should probably make sure that I stay in my lane, sort of, which isn't something that I necessarily like applied to this movie. But obviously when I was trying to get something made, and people would tell you back in the day, and I mean like, you know, 10 years ago, people would be like, well, write what you know. And so I know what early YouTube feels like. I know what those early years of discovery on YouTube feel like, because I remember I discovered the platform in like 2006. It had only been around for maybe a year or less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't start uploading then. I started uploading in 2009. But I was very much so like a YouTube watcher for those few years. And I would see like the channels that were starting to become popular. And what interested me about that the most looking back was none of those channels had amazing production values. They weren't like the microphone that you're using right now. Nobody had that.
No
Like
one
nobody
has
was.
that. Yeah.
People were just like busting out there. This camcorder that's right behind me is actually the camcorder we used to shoot all the Paranormal Paranoid episodes.
Oh, okay, cool.
And because people kind of just went out and did stuff.
Yeah,
You know, they weren't trying to, they didn't even know what the word monetization meant.
yeah.
And there was this feel of real discovery and real, I'll say safety about it. It didn't feel as terrifying to put a piece of yourself out there as it does now. And I really wanted to go back to that time period where what if a channel like that did actually capture some really terrifying things. And as you watch them, you're not thinking, oh, that's CG or that's AI, because nobody really did that on YouTube back then.
Right.
If you saw something disturbing, it was probably real.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to try to figure out if there's a way we could enter in through that lens of a paranormal investigator on early YouTube, which I haven't really seen.
Yeah, and I thought you did that very effectively, but I think that's interesting because you, in a sense, through your film criticisms and the stuff that you created online, were a culture commenter, if you will. And so, like, I think going into the film with that mindset, you're already like aware of like the cultural impact that early YouTube had, and so you're able to bring this level of, I don't know, insight or I guess just like a like analysis, if you will, to the filmmaking. And so yeah, you get these things that I think we've all sort of subconsciously thought of when we think of early YouTube, and you weave it into the fabric of the film. And so, I mean, was that like a conscious thing that you were thinking of, or was it just, this is the way I operate, this is the way I view this space in that period of time on YouTube?
I don't know if anything during the writing stage, like during the brainstorming stage of a script, whether you're outlining or you're just writing down ideas, it does feel kind of unconscious because it's so malleable and it can be anything at that point.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to figure out what this thing is that's like a little cell of an idea that will eventually get bigger. But once you are into the structure of it and trying to figure out like this foundation that you're laying for a building. Then it does become very like, okay, we're here, we're here, we're here. These are kind of the beats that I want to hit, and like I would like to be here by page 30. Things like that
Yeah.
do start to happen. But I do think in those initial stages, it's about what interests me, what excites me, what would I like to see, and then of course I had to put that away and say, what can I afford to do?
Yeah, right, right.
Like what can we actually get away with on a small budget?
Yeah.
Because who knows how much money we can get, and those types of questions become tantamount as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You brought up something that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit, which was the idea that we didn't really question the truth of early YouTube. We kind of just took things at face value. And I think for me, when I look at your journey, and specifically your personal journey, moving away from the religion you were part of, the being a Jehovah's Witness and everything, I think you in a sense had to learn how to ask questions and uncover the truth as you will, which is also reflected in Mia's journey here. And so I'm curious, was that something that you wanted to like kind of incorporate into like your protagonist, was like just like this idea of just like the things that we have been told our whole lives are maybe not exactly what we thought they were?
Yes, Griffin, absolutely. You are the first person to touch on that aspect of the movie. I've been waiting to talk about that. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
You're completely right. In every way, this movie, and I've realized it more. I knew there were things I consciously put into the film, but the more and more that I talk about the movie with folks like you, but also in post while we were cutting the movie, I was like, man, I really did put a lot of this in this movie, and gratefully, a lot of it still plays as a genre movie, and you don't have to have known anything about my religious past to enjoy that part of the movie.
Yeah.
But if you do, it does add something, because yes, I think one of the scariest things that a person can go through is what I did go through, which is a crisis of faith or a crisis of belief, something that you knew concrete in your mind was true and suddenly isn't. And everything that you've built up in your head, your entire system of hope, your belief for the future, all of the choices you've made up until now suddenly feel like they don't matter anymore. That's a very terrifying thing. And for Mia, her journey is very rooted in a system of belief that my sister is alive and the world is saying she's dead, and there is a hope there. But there is also this, without getting into any details, there's things that challenge her that she is forced to acknowledge exist. And this thing that had, always kind of been there in her past is having to be seen as something that maybe she will have to deal with. And I do think that a lot of us also go through that when it comes to childhood trauma, whether there was something that occurred in our past that happened to us or someone we love that made us realize, wait a second, this world isn't always perfect.
Yeah.
And can I acknowledge that, and can I deal with that, or am I going to let it stay as a wound and never heal? So yes, 100% yes.
Yeah, I mean, I found that to be like extreme, especially upon rewatch. It was something where I was just like, oh, this is, yeah, I get it now. And I think it's but to your point, it's one of those things where it's like, if you have that extra context of your background and your history, it just adds that extra layer of depth, which I think is really rewarding for, people who followed you for a long time or people who want to dig more into you. But on the surface, you still get the genre thrills and everything. And so like the fact that your movie is able to function on both levels is I think why it is as effective as it is. Kind of going off of that, I wanted to ask, I feel like for as much as you were talking about seeing yourself in Mia and stuff like that, there's also a part of Riley that I was thinking of. I was just like, oh, this person who is on YouTube, who is putting themselves out there, who is using this as I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but like a distraction from the stuff that's like really eating away at them. Specifically when in the film, when you're talking about, it's like hinted at that she's like getting really depressed, and I could see, some of your own journey in there. Did you see yourself putting equal amounts of yourself in both characters, or was it a matter of like, no, I feel like I'm more Mia and Riley was just something else that came out of me?
I don't know that I specifically was like trying to put myself into any of the characters. I think it inevitably happens with any writer. You look for things that have happened to you or things that you understand.
Yeah.
You try to find ways to incorporate that authentic experience that you lived and understand into a character that isn't real. And I think that's really, actors always say they're looking for moments of truth that feel real. And I think writers are very much the same way too. They're trying to figure out they're trying to understand the emotions of black and white text on a piece of paper, where it's like, I'm putting this out there on this piece of paper and I'm hoping that these emotions that I'm feeling or did feel at one point in time are translating. Then it's about communicating that to your actors and getting them to understand it in a way. And gratefully, I had an amazing cast that I didn't have to worry about that too much, because they're all so incredibly good at their jobs.
Yeah.
But it's an unconscious thing.
Yeah.
I think that there are moments in the movie, obviously, where as I was writing, I was like, oh yeah, this is close to this. This comes from this aspect of my life. But then I'm always trying to find a way to mold it into the confines of the story and make it work in that way. And there are things obviously in the movie that I've never talked about that I look at and go, okay, yeah, that's definitely coming from that maybe I'll talk about one day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it just, you're looking for moments of authenticity and trying to figure out how to communicate them through a genre lens.
So with that in mind, I am curious, and you can say whether or not you want to answer this or not. I'm curious about the Incubus, the name of the demon in here. Where did that come from?
Yeah, and I wanted to look into actual demonology and real, demon lore, and find something that is known as something that that's written about as an entity, and then sort of expand upon it. Because the Incubus demon is a demon that is known in lore. Like, it would watch, women and potentially impregnate them and move on. There's this idea of like, can I take that, delete some aspects of it, add some of my own, and then weave this childhood trauma into it, and try to basically start with something that, at least for people who love horror and who love demonology, feels like it's a starting ground of something they understand.
Yeah.
And then build upon that,
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. I didn't know if it was like a real thing, or if it was something that you had been like, I don't know, mulling over in your head, like a creation you came up with or whatnot. I've really been fascinated because, like, as someone who does review movies, I think it's interesting when you see a film critic go into filmmaking, people like Truffaut or whoever. And so I'm curious, what was your initial perception of critics who've taken the leap into filmmaking, and how does their work as critics influence their work?
A person I look to a lot was C. Robert Cargill, who began as a critic on Ain't It Cool News. He wrote Sinister and Doctor Strange and Black Phone, and coming up, Black Phone 2.
Yeah.
I know him now in real life, and he's a great guy, and I've hung out at his house, and he's so cool. But he's given me a lot of advice over the years about, like, if you're going to there will be, I think, more of an attention on that than any other first time filmmaker. And also, like, there's going to be people who review this movie who've never even reviewed a neon movie before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just because my name's on it. And, especially like on YouTube. And I think that's something to keep in mind too, is like, this is a first time film from someone who, came from a film critic background. But, and I've said this before, film criticism and making videos on YouTube came as a surprise, the amount of people who watched. I always wanted to be a filmmaker first and foremost, and I began that way as a teenager, and that never left my brain. I was always a filmmaker in my mind. And I've also talked a little bit, about how, like, when are we allowed to be something? Why do we need an agency or a corporation or a production company or a distribution company to reach out that has power and say, okay, you're officially this thing you're trying to be? Why can't we just be a filmmaker because we're making movies with our friends when we're teenagers? I would never look at a painter and say, you're not a real painter just because they've never sold a painting before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of where my head's at with this, is I would love for the perception to change, where it's not, we try to move past labels a little bit and look at someone who's like, what are they actually doing with all of their time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are they hoping to achieve?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, I agree. So I guess my last question is that, going off what we were talking about with film criticism, I think we're in a really interesting place where it's like so many media outlets are downsizing. And I think that's led to a lot of talented critics and writers that are being devalued or laid off or whatnot. And so I'm kind of curious, now that you are like on the other side as a filmmaker with the knowledge of maybe looking back and looking at that space, what are the biggest things plaguing film criticism, and what is essential for it to survive?
That's a big question, my friend.
Yeah.
And I do think that part of the problem is the same with the whole notion of, like, why aren't you making movies? You have a camera in your pocket. And I'm always like, well, yeah, everyone has a camera in their pocket, and everyone is trying to make stuff. And so it's tough to get noticed because there are so many people who now are trying to make stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that also applies to people making movie reviews, film criticism, things along those lines. It is tough to stand out. I was very lucky that I started in 2009 when there were only about 3 or 4 people on YouTube who were talking about movies,
Mm-hmm.
if you can imagine.
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
Yeah. And so I think that that's part of the problem. And problem might be the wrong word. It's part of the struggle that there are so many people also out there trying to do it. I also think there's a lot of people who are looking to reach out to make something because they want to connect with an audience. Maybe they're lonely and they're just trying to get something out there of themselves. And because of that, they're not being their authentic selves.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking to other creators who are more known and trying to emulate them. And that can be a problem too when you're not being yourself.
Yeah.
You need to be yourself when you whether you're turning on a camera or just writing. And the thing that I'm always inspired by is every few years I do notice new voices are being seen and heard and discovered. That's because there's always going to be new perspectives on things.
Yeah.
And people, especially as generations change and people get older, there's always like a new, fresh way of looking at something or seeing something. And I just hope that that continues. It is cliche to say be yourself, but honestly that is the best advice I can give, because that's what I've been doing for 16 years on YouTube. Is I've never been able to play a character. I've never been able to be like a version of myself. When I turn on the camera, it's how I feel that day. It's real. It's not fake. That's my first and foremost best advice, is just be real.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. And to that end, I am going to show you one quick thing from a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Alex from High Top Films, who wanted to just express his appreciation and give you a couple of kind words of...
I love Alex.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Hey, Chris, it's Alex, High Top Films. And I just want to pop in and say congratulations, dude. It's been so insane to see this whole thing play out from afar. I was in the theater literally, I think like a week ago, and saw the trailer and was like, holy shit, man. But more importantly, I just want to hop on and say thank you for everything you've done, not just for me, but for all those young creators out there. I remember the first time I saw one of your videos, I was probably 12-ish, and my first YouTube channel, Pizza Taco 8. You've always been so kind to me and so supportive. I remember you tweeted out the Scarecrow when we released that, and that was such a shock. I was like, holy shit, Chris Stuckmann watched our dumb little short film. And ever since then, you've been so supportive, and it's really just brought me back from like the biggest of existential moments of what am I doing? Can I break out of this box? And I'll never forget the fact that A, you donated and supported Jason, but B, you took the time to hop on a call with me, even though you were so busy, I'm sure, with life and with making your own fucking feature film. But you still took the time to just chat with me. And that meant so much. And that gave me such faith that, it is possible. And I think that what you're doing right now is giving so many people faith that it's possible to get their story told, to make their movie. And I think, man, like, without blowing too much smoke, you are an inspiration. I don't use that word lightly. And so I won't take up any more of your time. I just want to pop in and say, dude, you're the best, and I can't wait to see the movie. And much love, man. Thank you.
That's crazy. I cried a little bit.
I know. I was like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. But it just goes to show, man, like the reach that you've had, the like impact you've had on people's lives, like even filmmakers like Alex, like it blows my mind. I mean, it's like seeing one of us just go through the gate and just like break down all these barriers. It's so fucking cool, man.
Thank you,
cool.
Rippin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rippin, and thank you, Alex. Love you, man. Wow. Thank you so much for showing me that. That really made my whole day.
Of course. Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for the extra. I know I've just completely blown through with all your time, but I really, really appreciate it. Congrats on the film and best of luck. I hope it does amazing.
Thank you, sir.